Hello everyone, back again. Now we're gonna do the this should be 3. I'm almost sure. It's precision 3. Okay, we're gonna go on from the dance, and then I'm going to explain to you more about the fast slow. Definitely about the fast slow, the direction and in distance, and then transitions. Okay, so we're gonna go on from that dance. I just did it. I mean, you're gonna see how now you're seeing how I come up with things and how I think I want to put this video down a little bit more, but I guess it's all right there because let me see if I'm not going to I'm just gonna see if I can put it down just a little bit so that you can see better. Okay, that should be it. Yeah, that should be better. I think, as long as it doesn't slip. Okay, so, and then we're going to talk about the transition. So I'm getting into it, and a lot of the steps, maybe for later we could make a wider screen. I'm going to get some other things. But now I just want you to get an idea because it is just rough draft. I just went over it maybe, I got off work and I went over it maybe like 10 times or whatever, okay? So I'm not liking this, but I hope it's all right, okay? So here we go. And I'm going to try and stay in the screen, so my steps are going to be very small, okay? Precision, okay? Get like right here, because I'm going to be moving around, so I'm going to get over here. So, let's see how that one went. I'm going to try and do it a little bit more, like 3 times. Okay, one more time. Okay, so that's part of the dance. That's what I practice. But you're gonna see as time goes on. This is 2 years now. We're gonna keep developing it until you see, oh, how great it's gonna be and how fast I'm going to pick up on it. But this and the precision in the dance. So the things I wanted to do, what I'm doing is I've advanced in the dance, and I want to explain some things that happen in the other thing, the other precision too, so that they clear up things and to strengthen the dance. Not just that, but I want to keep in mind that we're basically on our feet now. I'm concentrating on here. There's a lot of hand gestures and everything that I didn't go over too much because I want to go through the dance pretty much concentrating on, I'm sorry, I said feet. That's not right. You can't use that. Remember, we won't use those terms. Pretty much on the bottom, everything that we do on the bottom. Okay, so I did do this and stuff like that because just because part of the dance, but I want to keep in mind that we have to go up. Okay, so that's why I'm trying to get through the dance with majorly correct concentration on the bottom. Okay, on the steps. So one thing I wanted to get in, I wanted to solidify for this lesson from last week. And then next lesson, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain and get into some of the things that we can learn from the dance, the part of the dance that we just did. And I overlapped the last, so I'll try and always overlap the last um, the last part of the dance to the next lesson, okay? So now we're gonna go back and I'm gonna explain some things which I really want to solidify. That's one thing I want to do. Okay, things I'm gonna do is we're gonna go over fast, slow. I think I already said it, and then direction and distance, and then transitions. Okay. The first one is what we did is this. Okay. Okay, so we did. Remember this, and it was like. Okay, it was something like that. The reason why I want you to solidify that is you have to realize that distance, don't say steps, you have to say distance is in, it's in everything in the dance and in the exercise I want to tell you. So I want you to get your minds set to think of distance. The reason why is because the distance is in your hydrogen X. Okay, you need your like I said, you need your your weight. Okay, I almost said verb. You need your weight, but working with your weight, and it is something like, it is so phenomenal. Something with your weight to work with your hydrogen X. So the reason why I want you to think of distance as the hydrogen X, because I can't make these move without, like I said, I'm just stalled, I'm just here. Now I'm going to add hydrogen X, and the hydrogen X is going to be the distance. So you see this? Distance. Distance. And you can say the weight caps it in time, okay? Because it stops. So that's one time, just like on a clock. But think about just this one move. Distance. And you see how closer I'm getting to you. Distance. And then I can go distance, 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 distance. So something, what I'm saying, we never even think about that. I could go like this, and I could go like this, and I could go like this, but you, even in a dance, I'll go like this, and I can go like that. But you never even think about the distance. And that's another thing to think about. It's like next time you're listening to someone talk or something, it might be boring, or you might see something boring. Think about a little bit, and it takes a long time, about the distance. You'll do it for a few seconds, but it is so concentrated that your mind would just like slip, either go to sleep or just cut off and say, okay, that's enough, because it is a lot. It seems like it's a little bit, but it's a lot. So I'm trying to get your mind set for, instead of just saying I'm taking steps, I want you, as soon as you see this part, you gotta think of distance. And the distance is coming from the mind. It's using the hydrogen X. I'm not gonna put the control in yet, but it's using the hydrogen X to its advantage. So, you know how I get the distance here. And then, okay, well, however we did that. Think about how I got that distance. Now, another thing too is like, this one is kind of confusing because I was going, okay, let me get it right. Let's get it right, okay? Let me see, and then I was like, here, okay, and then, okay, think about how I got that distance. I'm gonna do it in different ways. okay? So think about how I got that distance. Remember the other one is like this, which is hard, easy to tell. But this one, I'm gonna exaggerate it. I did the shape 2, 3, 4. 4. Okay, so I just did that, but I did the distance, but I want you to understand that distance is something. Distance is an instruction. I'm not going to put it exact, but I'm just trying to get you to understand that distance is an instruction that, and I can't use the control right now because it's going to get complicated. So I'm just going to say the distance used the hydrogen X to 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 do the distance that you wanted, okay? So on that one you did the distance, and then there's another one like this, okay? You didn't really see it because he got his hand like this, but here's another distance. How am I going to obtain the distance? And see how I'm obtaining the distance and coming to you? So I'm saying it's not just this. It's not just saying this space to this space. It's saying how you got to that space. Okay? And during the dance, I want you to think about that. It's easier to do the dance because you say, how did he get to that space? You know? So that's what I want to tell you as far as distance. Okay, now direction. Direction is within. Usually distance, oh, I want to tell you something else about this. Distance, you have to go from one quadrant to the next in order to make a distance so far. Okay, I know there's miracles and stuff like that you'll be able to do later on, or X-Men stuff once you learn this. But this is what you have to think about. Normally, you have to go from one quadrant to the other. You have to go from one quadrant to the other, one quadrant to the other, one quadrant to the other, one quadrant to the other. And that's another thing you never even thought about. And you still don't get it because you understand it, but you have to do it, and that's what takes a long time, okay? So, you can do it subconsciously, but it's something else that you got to think about, okay? One step to the other, one step to the other. And that's a miracle in itself. You're actually making distance in something that you never even thought about, okay? So that's okay. And another thing I wanted to say is like, okay, you remember in the movies, or it might even happen to you in the future, things are getting really complicated. Okay, you're driving in two vehicles, okay, and you want to jump over to your friend's vehicle, okay, like they do in the movies, okay. Now it'd be better for you. Now you can, you can't do it now, but you can see how it can be done. What you're in your quadrant, and you're gonna think, and you're gonna have more tools because you're gonna most likely finish this class, and you're gonna say, I'm in this quadrant. I'm gonna use this quadrant right here, and I'm gonna jump into my next quadrant, okay? So you're gonna jump, and then you're gonna get into the next quadrant, okay? You've seen it before. Like for instance, I'm here, and I wanna go over there. So the only way I could go there, I need distance, and I'm gonna make the distance with my hydrogen X. And I need my other quadrant. So I'm in this quadrant, and I'm going to jump to this quadrant, okay? So that's one benefit that you learned on this dance. You can jump into another quadrant that's really far away. But if you didn't think about quadrants, you would just be taking a real bad chance, okay? But once you strengthen, that's why I took off break, because I wanted to strengthen this quadrant. And this is doing much better, very well, okay? So I wanted to explain that to you about the distance. That's another thing about the distance, is you have to go, in everything I showed you, in order to make distance, you have to go from one quadrant to the next. And watch this again. all of those things, I went from one quadrant to the next, okay? Just like this, I went from one quadrant to the next. From one quadrant to the next. However, this one passed through the between quadrant, which made it smoother. So what I did was I went to this quadrant, and then I went in between, and then I got to this quadrant. And I went to this quadrant, in between, and then that quadrant. I'm gonna do it, keep doing it until you see. So you see how the different quadrants are. For something simple like what I'm doing like right now, it doesn't even like this, okay? It doesn't seem very simple, but the thing about it is that when you get into certain positions, then you'll say, oh, I'm glad it's so simple because now I have to do this complicated thing, okay, to the quadrants. So that's another one. We're going to keep strengthening it from one quadrant. In order to move, in order to make your distance, you have to go from one quadrant to the next. Remember that. I know there's other things you can hop, and you can hop on one leg, but we're talking about normally what we're doing and what we're going to use in this dance. The miracles and stuff like that we can come up with later on, okay, once we get strengthened. But for all the beautiful things also, you need other tools, okay? So now we finished distance. Now we're going in direction. Direction is within. The reason why I said you go from one quadrant to the next is there's one thing I want to say while I'm here, okay? While we're talking about distance, okay? There's another distance, and this is just a side point because I think I'm going to use it sometime, but I went over it. If I go right here, you can actually go outside, okay? It's called outside. You can go all the way up here, and you're not outside yet, but if you lift up on the bottoms, that's called outside, okay? Not here, but if I have to do something to go up, that's called outside, okay? That's outside, okay? And if I do it like here, say if I want to get a paper, okay? And I do whatever I can, and then I make another stretch, it's called an outside. We're going to talk about stretches later. If I go like this, and I have to do something, that last thing is called an outside, okay? That point is outside, not you, but that point that you're reaching. So that's just something that you're going to need later on, since we were talking about distance, and that's a distance. Okay, so now, let's say something else. So now we're going into direction. Direction is anything that you have to do when you're in the quadrant. Okay, I'm in the quadrant. It could be this quadrant, it could be this quadrant, or it could be this quadrant. Okay. You saw what I did. Okay, when you go like this, this is one thing. This is a direction. This right here, shaking, is a direction. But mostly, it's this. It's something that you keep. But I'm just giving you a basic generalization of direction. When I went like this, that's direction. This is direction. This is direction. Okay? Okay, direction. Not this. That's not direction. Okay, remember, that's distance. Okay? But usually it's something that's done while you're in place. Okay? Like I said, this is a very good example of direction. Okay? So now we did direction, and we'll strengthen those too. The next thing is transition. There's different kinds of transition. Transition means you're going from one step to the next. You're changing your steps. It's like when I did, and then when I went like this. Okay? This is a warp. Okay? And so if I'm going like this in the dance, Okay. Okay, that's a warp. I sort of like warp speed, but not yet, because we don't know how to do warp speed. But there is a warp speed, but we're just gonna call it warp now. Okay. So the reason why you call it warp, because you're doing it fast and you don't really want people to see. You just want to get into the next transition. And we talked about transitions in the beginning of our lessons. Okay. So here I'm gonna do the warp again. So you see, we went from here to here. Then there's another one. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's right here is a transition. We go from 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a transition. Okay? That's a warp 2. Now there's another transition. It's called a seam. The seam goes like this. Okay? And then I go like that to the other side. That's called a seam. Okay? Because I can't, okay, I'm going to go here, and then I have to change. So that's called a seam. Okay? Like when you sew, it's a seam. Then there's a change. The change is when I went like this. Okay? That's a change. Because I'm not changing anything, it's a change. Okay? Even this is a change. Like that. When I went like, I'm sorry, then I went like this, wait. And then I went like, that's a change. So you see the change keeps going. The warp goes fast so you can get right into the beat. And the seam is steps that you have to take in order to get to the next side or something like that. So we finished the transitions. So there's one more thing. Transitions, and then what's the next one? Transition. But you have to go over the transition. That's very important. I was going to do it over and over again, but now we have to close this video. There's one more thing. There's transition. I guess the transition was the last one. Oh, fast, slow. Okay. Another thing too, just like your hydrogen X, your mind produces hydrogen X to do the distance. It also does the speed. And we're going to go over this really quick, but you can go back and forth so you can catch this point. And this goes from here, like, okay? That's like a mental transition, but I'm not going to call it transition. I'm just going to say that it's controlled by the mind, which is so beautiful. If you can see the beauty in that, then you're on the right track. But if you think it's nothing, then you're not on the right track. And I'm going to do it again. If you could just think about that. Now we're in something that's really simple and basic, but that one thing could save your life. Definitely. That little thing. Like, for instance, like I said, you're in a car and you have to jump to the next car, okay? That's all you just say. If you need a little bit more, you actually have to say, what kind of speed do I need? What kind of speed do I need? What kind of direction do I need? But we're on speed, so I'm just going to talk about speed. What kind of speed do I need to do that? Before we did it subconsciously, we wouldn't know whether we made it or not. And I would go, okay, so I need this kind of speed. And then you make that kind of speed, okay? Because I made this kind of speed. I produced it. I'm producing it now. I'm producing the distance, and I'm producing the speed. So watch this. Okay. And that's it for this week. Precision, it should be 3. 2 or 3. I think it's 2. Precision 2 or 3, but I'm almost sure it's just 2. Let me see, we did that. That's precision 2, okay? Take care. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to the next class.